Welcome to today's webinar, Top 12 Cold Calling Voicemail and Email Strategies, featuring the likes of Grant Cardone, Ken Krogh, Coca Sexton, Heather Morgan, Art Sobchak, Michael Padone, and Gabe Larson. We're excited to have put together this compilation of our best cold calling and voicemail and email strategies from the last couple of years. We hope that you enjoy it. We want to apologize for this morning's technical difficulties and hope that you enjoy this. So let's jump right into it. How this will work, the webinar will last just over an hour if you watch all the clips. It includes, like I said, the clips from the top 6 cold calling, voicemail, and email webinars. On the right-hand side of your console are the full versions of these webinars in case you want to click and go watch the full version. We also included 4 cold calling, voicemail, and email ebooks that are available for free download on the right-hand side of the slide column. Also, if you have anything that you'd like to reach out to us about, you can use the question Q&A console, or you can hashtag Inside Sales Webinar at Twitter, and we'll tweet back to you. This is just a quick plug for our Sales Acceleration podcast with Gabe Larson and Steve Ehrer. You can catch it by going to insidesales.com/resources/podcast. And we also have it in the link on the right-hand side in the Resources tab. Here's a quick look at today's lineup. We'll start with cold calling or cold call voicemail and email strategies. Get more contacts to call you back with a clip from Michael Padone, and then we'll go to how to write a cold email that your prospects will respond to every time, featuring Heather Morgan. The third one is cold calling tips and $1,000,000 sales prospecting secrets. We have a clip both from Ken Krogh and Grant Cardone on that one. And then we'll do cold calling versus cold emailing, a clip with Brian Kreuzberger, and then straight to Art Sobchak in Smart Calling, Eliminate the Fear of Failure and Rejection from Cold Calling. And then the last one will be a clip from Coca Sexton talking about cold calling, bridging social selling with inside sales for a winning strategy.
When you're making a first-time call, your objective is simply to do this. Your objective is to get a call back and advance a sales call, or to have the prospect willing to take your call the next time you call them. Let me explain the last one first. When I say to have the prospect willing to take your call the next time you call them, here's what I mean. You get in the morning, you get the prospect's voicemail, you leave a message. You go ahead in your CRM, you mark down that you log a call, and then you go ahead and schedule another attempt, right? By the way, if you schedule another call for them, another try, is that a follow-up call, or is it still a first-time call? That's the question right now. Is it a first-time? Very good. Some people are saying it's a follow call. It's not. It's still a first-time call because I haven't spoke to them, right? So if I'm calling somebody the first time, I leave a message, right? Leave a message. Then I move on to my other leads, but I have to schedule a second attempt. So what I do in my CRM is I label it this way: first-time call, second attempt, or first-time call, third attempt. Got it? Okay. So it's in our CRM. I have a second attempt scheduled for the afternoon. I go about my day. I start calling my other leads. In the meantime, prospect comes in, listens to voicemail. If you leave a message like I'm about to share with you, they're going to go, hey, that sounds good. I like this. I want to call this guy back. But they get busy. They can't call you back right now. They have a meeting, whatever. They go about their day. They forget about you. So now it's in the afternoon. In your CRM, it notifies you have a second attempt to make. So now you call it. Now you get the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper says, hold on a second, says, hey, Joe, I got so-and-so on the phone for you. And they go, oh, yeah, I wanted to speak to them. Put them on hold. I'll be right there. That's what I mean by, or to have the prospect willing to take your call the next time you call them. So far, so good? We still here? All right. Excellent. Now, let's go to the first thing. To get a call back and advance a sales call. Why am I focusing on to get a call back and advance a sales call? Here's why. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and a lot of the sales groups, and I see a lot of people giving this advice on how to get callbacks. And one of the popular techniques, or actually it's called a tactic, one of the popular tactics that's floating around there right now is to simply get the, when you get the prospect's voicemail, is to simply go ahead and say your first name, your number, and then say you have a question for them and hang up. Now let me ask you a question. Now some people say they have like a 95% callback rate on that. Okay. Have you ever gotten one of those voicemails? Have you ever been on the receiving end of one of those where it's the first name, they say they give your number twice, and then they say they have a question for you and they hang up. You don't know who it is, right? Here's the problem. There's only three possibilities. If you're a C-level exec and you hear that, there's only three possibilities that that's going to be. Either one, it's the client and they need help. Two, it's a prospect and maybe they're ready to move forward. Or three, you're going, maybe it's a sales call. But if you decide to call it back to make sure it's not one of the first two, and then you do call it back and you find out it's a sales call, how's your mood? How's your mood in that situation? Okay, a lot of you saying you'd be pissed off, right? Is that how you want to start your first interaction with your prospect, by pissing them off? I know I wouldn't. What good is it if you piss off, if you're getting a 95% callback rate, but you're pissing off 100% of the people that call you back? So that's why I'm saying your objective for leaving a voicemail is to get a call back and advance a sales call. The key is this, is we want to get the call back, but we want to do it in a way where we are able to advance a sales call. And that's what I'm about to show you. You guys ready? All right. Excellent. Some of you guys are pretty comedic on this private chat group here. All right. Here we go. I'm going to show you 3 voicemail templates that you guys can use. Now, these templates that I'm about to share with you, you could either go ahead and use them word for word and plug in certain keywords for your vertical or your industry to make it your own, or you could just take the basis model and use it to spark some creativity and create your own from scratch using the formula. It's up to you. But the first one I call is a cold call template one. So it starts like this. Watch this. Hi, John. This is Michael Padone with XYZ Company. Reason for my call, have an idea on how to possibly help you avoid. And now, this is where the secret sauce is. When you say avoid, you have to mention the specifics of a common pain or problem that your prospect has to have in order for them to be interested in what it is that you have to offer. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? So, Susan B., let me give you an example. If you're in sales, and let's say you're having a hard time hitting your quota, and you're having a hard time getting past gatekeepers. If I call you and you got a message that said, hi, Susan, this is Michael Padone with salesbuzz.com. Reason for my call, have an idea on how to possibly help you avoid being rejected by gatekeepers. And let me just stop right there. You're going to tell me you're not going to listen to the rest of that voicemail message. I have a feeling you will, especially if that's my target audience that I'm calling on, right? So you have to know the specifics of a common pain that you solve for your audience. And then once you're done with putting that specifics of a common pain, and you can follow it up with, and I wanted to see if what we offer would make sense for us to have a quick conversation, find out a little bit more about it. I can be reached at, and now you leave your number. Then you say, again, my name is, your name, repeat your company, say your number again. And by the way, if you cannot write your number down as you're saying it, guess who else can't? Guess who else can't? That's right, your prospect can't. So a lot of times what I'm doing is if I'm going ahead and I'm writing the number down, or if I'm saying the number, I'll write it down as I'm saying it so I make sure I'm saying it at the right pace. Let me show you the next slide. Here's an example. If you sell accounting services, and you're calling and you find out that you would do some pre-call research, you'd find out what type of hospital it is. You simply say, hi, John, this is Michael Padone with XYZ. Reason for my call, have an idea on how to possibly help you avoid making overpayments on property taxes and insurance premiums while streamlining your asset tracking process, and wanted to see if it would make sense for us to have a quick conversation, find out a little bit more about it. I can be reached at, and you say your name and number and company again twice, that's it, you end the call. Easy peasy. Make sense? You guys like that? Awesome. Very cool. This is what I call the voicemail template, the cold call template, right? You're making a straight up cold call. All right. Now, let me show you the referral template. How many of you get referrals or you're looking for referrals? And by the way, let me take a second here. There's a couple of you saying that's scripted. You should have a script. As a matter of fact, you should have a playbook. If you're making quota, you're driving a nice car, you're making tons of money, you're not living paycheck to paycheck, and you're not using a script or a playbook, then keep doing it your way. But if you're not, then you might want to take notice on this is what it takes to get to that next level, right? It's not that you now have to have a script. What you need to do is have a playbook. Every Oscar-winning actor out there all have a script. But the reason why they won is they made it their own, and they really took it to the next level. So that's why you actually have to have a basis. Otherwise, you're just a captain winging it. You're going to fly by the seat of your pants, and that's why you're going to live paycheck to paycheck. If you want to avoid that, this is what needs to happen in order to fix that. So watch this. Let's see if you have a referral from somebody. Now you would say, hi, John, this is your name with your company. I was speaking with, now mention the referral person's name, over at, and then now you mention the referral person's company, regarding how we help him or her. Now take your pick here. You can say how we help him or her cut, reduce, avoid, whatever it is, and now you enter the common pain. And then you can say, he or she mentioned, I should give you a call, get your feedback or your thoughts or your opinion on what we offer. I can be reached at, and then you say your name and number again twice. Make sense? And yes, Jane, you're right. You have to that's the key. You have to practice these things. You're going to have to practice it to where it doesn't sound scripted. Got it? All right. But if you don't know what to practice, that's going to be a problem. Let's go to my favorite one here. Here's my favorite. My favorite one is the competition template. Every C-level executive wants to know what their competitors are up to. So how many of you sell to certain verticals? And if so, give me an example. Yep, you just use your chat box. How many of you have a certain vertical? So give me, so like staffing. So the first person to respond was staffing. So now what kind of staffing are we talking about here? Do you do staffing for all different industries, or is it for a specific industry, right? So if it's a specific, so let you say in healthcare. So let's say you do staffing for healthcare. Now, let's say you're calling on a new lead. Let's say even at a cold call, you prospected, you found it, they have certain prerequisites that make them a potential suspect. But you have already closed and you already have on your client list 3 other healthcare facilities that you've worked with. You could simply call, you get that cold call person's voicemail and say, hi, so-and-so, this is your name, your company. Reason for my call, we recently helped, and now mention the 3. We recently helped competitor 1, 2, and 3 avoid this while at the same time gain that, and wanted to see if it might be something you'd possibly be able to help or know a little bit more about as well. I can be reached at, and then you leave your name and number twice. Real simple. That one I used to use all the time. I got so many callbacks because, again, the C-level execs want to know what their competitors are up to. And when you can go ahead and say that we've helped company A, B, and C avoid, now you mentioned a big problem that you solve, while at the same time, and then you throw in the desired benefit or the result that they got out of that, and then you follow it with, and I wanted to see if this might be something you'd possibly be interested in knowing a little bit more about as well, and you leave your name and number, you're going to go ahead and start to get some callbacks.
So the first step in writing a cold email is thinking about the subject line. What can you do to entice these people to actually open your email versus just delete it or ignore it, or worse, have it marked as spam? So way too many emails these days are extremely generic, and they're using the same templates and subject lines from 5, 10, 15 years ago. Things like introduction, company name / first name, and so forth. And the problem is, this approach has been done to death. People want a magic bullet, but in reality, once you have that and it's just used so many times, people become immune to that trick and actually very weary of it. And so what I instead advocate is thinking of value that you can actually add to your subject line to entice your prospects to open and keep reading and actually form a relationship. So a really simple trick is to say that you have an idea for something, or advice for something else, or a tip, feedback, anything along these lines that just by opening the email, they're likely to get value out of it. And so here is an email that got, I believe, 12 people responded to it, and actually set up appointments. The open rate was probably around 53%, and it's idea for company sales objectives. So that is so much more specific and relevant and thoughtful, that it makes the prospect think that you've actually taken the time to write to them as a one-off request instead of just spamming them. So once you've got them to open it, what's next? Okay, so the first sentence of your email determines whether they're going to keep reading or just stop right there. And the problem is, a lot of people's emails are very, very self-focused. It's kind of natural in terms of how we were taught to write letters as children. You're used to saying who you are and why you're contacting them. Unfortunately, in most cases, this is actually a waste of space. They don't actually care who you are, who your company is. All they really want to know is what's relevant for them. What's the value that they're going to get out of reading and maybe responding, and how does it relate to them and their company and their life. So this example here, of wanting to introduce you to the company name of the startup, Acme, and what Acme does is we intend to revolutionize the software quality assurance model. So that doesn't say anything about the benefit to the prospect. What are they going to get out of it? Great, you're going to revolutionize this. Okay, I'm already skeptical whenever anyone says revolutionize or game change or anything like that, but this is very vague. It doesn't say anything specific. There's no benefit in there for the prospect whatsoever. On the other hand, you look at this first sentence that goes with the subject line I just showed you. It says, I was wondering what company X was doing to achieve their sales goals. This is a little bit vague. It could be a little more specific in terms of maybe different KPIs or give a little more context, but it explains why the person is reaching out to contact the prospect, as well as it opens a conversation. And this is really all a cold email is. It's just a conversation. You're not trying to sell them. You're not trying to get them to do a bunch of different things. All you're trying to do is get them to respond and start a conversation with you. Nothing more, nothing less. And so, assuming that you've got them to keep reading and you've hooked them with something that's interesting and conversational, what's next? Okay, now is where you build your credibility. You're still a stranger, and the prospect is probably pretty suspicious of why you're reaching out to them. They're very quickly evaluating in a few seconds if you are worth their time or not. Are you someone credible, or are you full of BS? And so that's where the social proof statement comes in. So in this case, the person who sent this cold email said, we have worked on a number of projects and campaigns. All our packages are tailor-made and designed according to your requirements. Increase your client base and market your product to millions, or let us bring the buying leads for you. First of all, this is awful grammar. It's not very well written, but it's so non-specific. It's offering and promising a lot without explaining how, and also just giving grand statements without any kind of proof or credibility. And so when you see something like this, any intelligent person would be skeptical of claims like this. It's not convincing. So what you should do instead is try to build trust and a sense of credibility through actually naming names of some clients and giving stats wherever you can. So here's a sentence that goes to the intro and subject line that was just mentioned. It says, "We have a theory about leveraging the competitive spirit of games to increase sales productivity. This same concept has helped our SaaS clients increase their revenue by 100% in 8 weeks and achieve a 65% increase in outbound emails over 3 months." And so it actually did say the client's name here, which was taken out of the example, but notice how it says SaaS clients. This email was all sent to VP sales operations titles at SaaS companies. So there's evidence of success with people like them. And what's the success? 100% increase in revenue in 8 weeks and a 65% increase in outbound emails over 3 months. So 2 positive things. It kind of explains how there's a little bit of mystery to keep you intrigued, but it's much more credible. So, okay, let's assume that you've gotten as far as convincing these people to somewhat trust you. They've read the email halfway through or 2/3. What's next? Your call to action. So you can get everything right and then screw up your call to action and your whole email was a waste. A lot of times, one of the biggest mistakes that people do is they forget that they need to have an incentive for the prospect to respond in their call to action. Other times they'll also have a very weak or confusing call to action or just simply even leave the call to action off. But let's look at this example. So it says, "If there is any question you want to ask, feel free to message me at any time." This is something I might use for a breakup email. This is definitely not a call to action I would use for a cold email. It's not giving any reason to the prospect to respond at all. It's so passive, and it's just not very enticing. So let's look at this one on the other hand. "When do you have time for a short call so I can learn a bit more about companies, sales processes, and share my sales productivity idea with you?" So this is going back to the same example that I showed before. It's the same email. This is the call to action sentence there. And so notice how there's an incentive here. The incentive is hearing an idea, which we talked about before, is related to increasing one company's revenue by 100% in 8 weeks. So the idea is that the prospect thinks, okay, if I take this call, there's a very good chance that whether or not I do business with this person, I'm going to learn something of value that will improve my company's sales productivity or revenue. And as a VP of sales operations at a software company, that is very enticing to me. So that's probably why that this single email got about 12 appointments when it was first sent out, more since then. So let's look again at the entire email that was actually written, just so you can see it in its entirety. So notice how short it is. A lot of emails are way too long. They resemble novels or blog posts. And I don't really want to say that there's a certain number of sentences or characters that you can't go beyond whatsoever, because it's important that you are clear in explaining what your intentions are and what the value is. But generally, as a rule of thumb, I would not go beyond 5 sentences. In fact, most of my cold emails are actually only 3 sentences long, although this one is 4. So the trick is to focus only on one idea or benefit per cold email. So the main idea or benefit here is sales productivity, increasing sales productivity. So if you notice, everything in this email is related to that or supporting that in one way or another. So the subject line is a little bit vague but intriguing, but it's related to sales productivity. The first sentence is kind of an intro to a conversation around that. And then in the middle, they explain a little bit more about their approach to sales productivity as well as their results they've had. And then finally, there's a call to action around that. Notice how you're not listing 5 bullets of different benefits or different product features. It's all one idea. And the best copywriting, whether it's cold emails or, web copy or whatever, is very focused. And when you lose focus, you dilute your message. So for every email you send, just focus on one idea at a time. If you feel like you have a lot of different ideas and value props, that's great. Instead, what you can do is make a list of all of them and separate them into different emails. So I actually recommend sending 8 different emails to every prospect because actually about 30% of your responses in a campaign will come from emails 5 through 8. So if you're only sending 4 emails, you're missing out on about 30% of your leads. So each of those emails can be focused on a single takeaway point, just like this one. And if you do that, and try to cover as much ground as you can by listing all your different, not listing, but in each email going over a different value prop and a different angle around that value proposition, whether it's more fear of loss or more focused on competition or desire, that will attract different kinds of people from your audience. And so if you have 8 emails, email 3 might be very desire focused and that will attract some people, whereas email 4 might be more fear of loss and that attracts a different kind of person, and that's okay. Also notice that there's a lot of personalization in this example. Company name is mentioned 3 times. And that's important so that the prospects know that this is not a completely mass email, even though it actually is. And you can go a lot further with personalization, even having a custom sentence. But before you go wild with that, it's better to go lighter with personalization like this to see what your baseline is, so that you know basically the cost of increasing your personalization. So you want to think, for spending an extra 2 hours for a list of 100 people, how much higher response rate am I getting? Because that time could also be spent elsewhere. So if 2 hours, I'm making these numbers up, but if for 2 hours you're able to significantly increase your response rate, then you should definitely personalize more, especially if your audience is very competitive. In terms of other industries or reaching out to them a lot. But if you have a really great product and not a lot of people are hitting your audience and they're very excited about your product, maybe you don't need to do that. So it just kind of depends, and that's why it's good to start with minimal personalization. The last point I want to note is that this email is also very conversational. And it's written in first and second person. So you want to avoid third person using words like they and our industry, blah, 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 blah. Keep it very conversational so it feels like a one-on-one request and not marketing. And I hope you found that helpful.
We call it the 7 contact methods. And Grant, I've had a chance to experience some of his other training. He knows a lot of this stuff. He's a master at it. But number one is immediacy. Do it now. The internet has given us all ADD. We want to talk to people now. And it's amazing how fast things decay. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Be persistent. Know what time of day they're probably going to be available. Even what day of week has an impact. And what's optimal to your specific target audience. This one's sort of simple, number 6 here, and I'm going to walk through these here shortly. Call their phone number directly. Don't go through the main People say, how do you get past the gatekeeper? Well, it's really easy, guys. Just get the phone number for their cell phone or their desk, and you'll go right past the gatekeeper. That's the new way to do it. And then lastly, caller ID. I'm going to talk about that one. That one's sort of fun. So let's jump in real quickly to these 7 contact methods. Then I promised I'd share 4 little tidbits on social selling, which is probably the most requested topic we get lately. Well, we did a research study with Dr. James Oldroyd while he was at MIT. He redid the study again later with Harvard Business Review. And we asked, how fast should you contact people based on an inquiry? So let's say they go out to a website, they put in their name. How fast should you call them back? Well, this graph right here shows you 5 minutes, you guys. You got to get back to them within 5 minutes. In fact, if you wait 30 minutes, you will lose 10 times the chance of reaching that person. 10 times, you guys. So, in fact, the original study was 100 times. So we've got to hustle. We found that if you call people back within 5 minutes, the odds of qualifying those people are 21 times. You can see the bottom left there. And then the big question was, how fast does the standard salesperson respond to a lead? It's right there in orange. 39 hours and 22 minutes is the average. Oh my heavens. So the best practice is 5 minutes, but the average is still 39 hours. Guys, that's like going into Nordstrom's and say, I want to buy a pair of shoes. And they say, well, why don't you come back? You go in there Wednesday, you say, why don't you come back Friday morning? It just makes no sense. So we got to hustle. We got to move. Let me talk to you about a different aspect of hustling. This graph shows how fast an appointment decays if you set it far away. That's a whole different mindset. So you can see right first there, the 0 is if you set an appointment for day 0. So let's say 10 o'clock in the morning, I set an appointment for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The blue line is the appointment show rate. The orange line is what's the chance of them qualifying into the sales funnel, and the green line is the close ratio. But look at that. Day 0, you have only 63% of people show up for that appointment. Oh my gosh. And look, 4 days out. If you set an appointment 4 days away, 28% show up. Now, that's not specifically causative because if they're not interested enough to set it for today, they're probably not very interested in showing up to an appointment either. But things decay really, really fast, and we don't realize it. Well, rule number 2, persistency. Persistency. What this means is you got to keep trying. Now, the first call is still the best. If you call someone, it's like 37% of all the value you're ever going to get out of that call comes on the first call. But most people only make 1.5 phone call attempts on a lead or a list before they give up and say, well, they must not be interested. They don't want to talk to me. Well, the truth is they're busy. They're really, really busy. And as Grant said, I loved it. Don't quit. You know, one of us is going to give up and it ain't going to be me, so, unless I die. So keep at it. In fact, we found the average best practice should be somewhere between 6 and 9 attempts if you're going to really wring the value out of that opportunity. So stay at it. Stay with it. People will talk to you. Method number 3, let's talk about this. Time of day. Now, this is interesting. What time should you call somebody? This research was done twice, and here's the lift. There's a 147% difference between calling at the best time of day and the worst time of day. Oh, my heavens. The first study was done with over 100,000 data points. The second study with Harvard Business Review was done with 10 times the data, over 1 million data points, 1 million calls, and it still comes around here. That you got the mornings and late afternoons and evenings on average are the best time. Now, I'm going to show you something a little bit different here in a moment. It might be unique to your industry, but in the mornings or the late afternoons for businesses are the best time to call. Now, what about the best day to call? Well, this is interesting. The worst day is Tuesday. I don't know why. I'm guessing that everyone gets so dang busy on Monday digging out of their weekend, they finally dig out by Tuesday, and by Wednesday they're ready to make calls again. I don't know. But for some reason, Wednesdays and Thursdays are the best days to make contact. Guys, 49% higher chance of reaching a busy decision maker on a Thursday versus a Tuesday.
There it is. Okay. So, look, first thing, to me, is the most important thing, whether it's a cold call or warm call, whether it's sizzling hot, you got to have the right attitude when you pick up this telephone. And for me today, a telephone is, and let me just take 1 second, Ken, because I got about 3,000 people on Periscope and Meerkat. You guys go to Inside Sales right now. You can still catch this, and we're about to drop into the meat of it. So go grab that right now. Inside Sales and Grant Cardone, and you'll find the link. Okay, so Kim, what I'm saying is the attitude before you start making the call, send out the email, and we've all heard this, we've said it, people talk about it all the time. Look, you need a bandwidth and an attitude that's so big. Too many people use the telephone and they depend on 1 or 2 calls. So when I pick up a phone, or when I send an email, or when I put a contract in front of someone, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my head wrapped around the concept that I can and believe that I can sell anyone on any deal in any situation, no matter whether it's 58 cents or whether it's $58 million, whether it's a very simple cycled sale or whether it's very complex. I give myself a little pep talk each time, hey, I can sell this guy. Even when, Ken, I'm in front of who I already know can't be a decision maker. So it's very important when you pick up this phone, you have to give yourself a little attitude adjustment or maybe a major attitude adjustment to understand that you can sell anyone, anytime in this situation on this first call. Now, while that might be a little unrealistic, that's what we want you to do. You know, the people that do crazy things are unrealistic. Number 2, you got to believe your product is worth 10 times what you're charging or billing for it. You got to know that your product, the value of it is worth at least 10 times the money and the time that your prospect will invest in it. Number 3, you got to be willing to keep calling people back until they get on the phone with you. You know, a guy told me the other day, he's like, you got to quit calling me. I said, look, man, if you want me to quit calling you, one of us has got to die. And it better be you because I'm coming back. All right? So you have to have this mentality that you're not quitting. You need to bring that into your call, and you need to let your prospect know that that's how sold you are, that that's how much in love you are with your product and service. I met with a billionaire yesterday. He just sold his company I'm in Silicon Valley today, and he sold his company 2 months ago, closed on the deal for $21 billion. And he said, Grant, look, persistence is everything. You know, if you don't believe in the product you're selling, if you're not willing to knock on the door one more time, if you're not willing to go get in front of that guy long after he's told you or she's told you, hey, don't call me back, you need to find another product to sell. Number 4, know your pitch. You got to have a pitch down. That's where scripts are valuable and important. Ken, what you do with systems, showing people how to identify leads, how to connect the pieces, how to build a rapport and a relationship with a client based on the social mediums and technologies available today is unbelievable. As important, you have to know your pitch. When you go into that pitch, into that presentation, whether it's 2 minutes or 14 minutes, it's probably not going to be much longer than that. What is your goal? Is your goal to close the deal? To find out who the other decision makers are? Is it to get an appointment? And you're going to have a different pitch and a different script for each one of those. Number 5, you got to have a big claim. You got to have a claim that's a hook that the prospect cannot regurgitate, okay? What I mean is they can't spit it up. They can't get rid of it. The hook is so deep in the client that it literally creates a picture they can't erase, if you will. So like a hook for my company is, we're going to increase your sales 22% or more regardless of your participation in the program. We do it for every company. We've done it for little companies and giant companies. So we're going to increase your sales 22%. Nobody can make that claim, and we'll do it in 60 days or less. So we want a big, big hook. Number 6, you need to understand that when you're making a call, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Everything to gain, there is nothing to lose. Great salespeople know this. Number 7, believe you're the lowest price and the best value regardless of your price. Now, what that means is you have to convince yourself, even if you're 4 times the price tag, you're still the lowest price. Ken, I know you know what that means, but for the audience listening,
absolutely.
Look, if you're 10 times more money than the guy down the street, you still have to believe, because of your service, your offer, your proposal, your unique proposition, that you're actually less money. So I just sold a real estate portfolio for $58 million, okay? And some guy was saying that they overpaid for it. I'm like, no, you didn't. He's like, we can get a similar product down the street for $10 million less. I said, my deal's still better. And I gave them 12 reasons why it was better, and they closed with me. So you have to really be able to do the math on why you're the better deal. Number 8, treat everyone respectfully. This is a big problem in phones. People that are using phones all day start treating people like the last 8 people they failed with. And then they treat the one that wants to buy from them like the previous 8 failures. So treat everyone respectfully. And number 9, never depend on one call. You need lots of calls. Anybody that's experienced, and if you're taking notes, write this down. If you experience rejection in a phone call, if you experience the sensation of disappointment, it is because you have too little going on. Disappointment and rejection are not emotions. They're indications that your model is broken and you don't have enough business going on.
But in emailing, subject lines are not important. I would love to see the question area in a minute or two, because most people, when they think of cold emailing, it's like, hey, subject lines are the most important. But from what I've found, it's not the subject line that gets you a response. And it's what's put in the email that actually gets you a response. And if you think about any email, there's always like an auto preview pane, right? So you have an all new, like your iPhone or your email, you have the sent by Brian Kruzberger, here's the subject, and you'll see 1 or 2 sentences below. And how most people look at it, and they say, Brian Kruzberger, whatever my subject is, hi, my name is Brian Kruzberger, I'm the blank, 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 a breakthrough email, whatever, right? I noticed that you did something. And if not the subject lines that you need to think about, what you actually need to think about is like, what is the content that you put into your email? How do you personalize it so you create an opportunity for everybody else? The biggest mistake people make in email is they write about themselves. So, hey, let me tell you what I do and how I do it, and let me know if you want to talk. And how you need to approach it is, let me tell you, what I could potentially do for you, and there are ways to find out what to put in your email so the person is much more likely to resonate with whatever you're saying. So we're going to go through, a cold emailing template. This is one of the most ripped off email templates, if not the most ripped off email template. This is a sample email in our course. The first section of this is the subject. So I use the appropriate person. Now, when I look at this email, I want to talk about a couple different points here. So in the area in the green, I mentioned multicultural media. So I want to be vague here on purpose. I am essentially navigating the organization to find that, if I was doing inside sales and it's a VP of sales who is the decision maker, I would, say, appropriate person in charge of who handles sales or who handles revenue. I want the CEO or the top level person to say, well, there's a lot of people who handle that. I'm not sure. I have to keep reading. The next sentence, I'm telling them who I wrote. I write 4 separate emails, including the names of the people, and then I tell them essentially what I'm looking from them, what I'm looking for from them. And, if it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. We go into the actual phrases in more detail. Now, you got to get to the point fast in your pitch, which is the second section of this email. Now, in the first sentence, BootieBox helps increase restaurant revenue by marketing to Hispanics. I want to get to the point and tell them how I can help them. I can help them increase revenue. Now, at the end, you'll look at this email, and there's something like 8 or 9 sentences in it. This is the most important portion of your email, where you need to personalize it for the other person. You need to create an opportunity. You also need to do something called the deep sea fishing technique, where you're creating multiple different opportunities for multiple people in the organization. So if you're reaching the VP of marketing and the CMO and the CEO and the CFO, they're all going to look at it a little bit different, and they're all going to have a different priority. So you need to speak to all of those. And then in the end of this, you need to create credibility, because who are some of the big clients that Inside Sales has worked with, Mike?
We've worked with Groupon. We've worked with Microsoft. We've worked with VMware. We've worked with Paychex, Fidelity. There's a number of companies that we've worked with.
So if I was contacting Google, I would say, you work with Groupon. Who is the second one?
Microsoft?
Okay, yeah. Some clients include Groupon and Microsoft. I've seen in email trails, people are like, hey, I don't know who these guys are, but they work with Microsoft and Groupon, so we should probably check them out. So if I was your sales team, I'd say, okay, Microsoft, through their competitors, I'm going after Yahoo, I'm going after these guys, because they will most likely just take my meeting because, I'm working with a competitor, so they want to find out what the competitor is doing. It's very important to create a lot of credibility in your pitch. Now, at the end, this is your call to action. I would never use hey, how does Tuesday at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. look for you? Because, again, that's based on my schedule. What I found is I'm really looking for the appropriate person. That's my whole goal. Hey, who should I talk to at the organization? And then, getting a referral to talk to that person. Now, I would use the word, say, calendar and talk to. And, we've analyzed and tested this. Now, if you look at, say, calendar, it actually increases response rate by 35%. The reason there is, if you think of, say, your schedule, you're planning for your, by hours and, and days. If you think, you're planning, hours and that day for your schedule, right? And if you use the word calendar, you're thinking, days, weeks and months. And if I ask somebody, how's your schedule look, how does it look? It looks busy. Now, if I ask you how your calendar looks, it probably still looks busy because we're coming up on Christmas. But if I ask you how this, January or February look in your calendar, it's wide open, right? February, I have nothing planned. Now, if you look at, say, talk to, talk has a lower implied commitment versus, say, call or meet. We'll figure out, how we're going to, whether it's going to be a demo or presentation or a conference call. You could say speak to as well. I like to use the word talk just because it has a very low commitment on time, and you're also asking them to, to delegate this to, somebody else. I want to look at a couple of case studies. Now, we have, a bunch more slides to go. If anybody has to leave at any point, that's totally fine. I'm going to just keep going because we have a bunch of different case studies. And we also have to talk about follow-up and the bonus. Now, we worked with McDonald's and Bank of America, and a variety of different organizations. All of those sales were based on, just sending an email. And we've seen salespeople using the system generate $500 million in the last year. Now, it's worked in French, it's worked in German, it's worked in Spanish. Actually, one of the first guys I ever taught this to, it was like a Swiss guy reaching out to a company in Belgium, and he wrote the email in French. And he forwarded it, this was a couple of years ago, he forwarded me the email, and I didn't even know what it said. I had to go to Google Translate, and he was really excited, so I assumed he got the meeting. But it's worked on 5 different continents. I showed you 3 different parts of one email sample, and there's something like 35 different emails in the system, on how to get to the decision maker. And this is just one email in a 4-part sequence. I typically do 4 emails. If I'm doing an outreach, I won't do 7. And I find that 60% of all the emails happen in the 60% of the responses happen in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th emails. And we cover much more how to actually craft your pitch, how to personalize it based on what you do, your technology, who you're trying to reach to, and also the level of the decision maker that you're contacting. Now, if you look at the next step as far as responses, what you can actually expect through our course, my goal response rate is 80% for our clients. And if they're not getting 80% response rate, it's I'll give them their money back. But in this case study, we send out 522 emails. That's actually organizations or companies. 428 of them responded. 46% of those people took our meeting, right? So there's obviously a drop-off. That's pretty consistent. And then within that, 26% of the 192 meetings that we went on resulted in a sale. And the average sale was something like, just under $80,000, and there's over $4 million in revenue. Now, if I look at the responses, the common responses that you're going to get are ask for more information, or hey, we're not interested, or hey, we're working with another competitor, or now is not a good time. So in the system, we actually cover how to respond to every one of those different scenarios. It's actually in the follow-up section, which is the next section we'll go through.
Hello, my name is Ashley from InsideSales.com, and I am pleased to introduce you to our speaker, Art Sobczak.
Of course, the solution is smart calling. Smart calling, very simply, is knowing something about the people, the industries, the companies, and the situations that we're calling into so that we can be relevant and we immediately can grab some attention and engage them in a sales conversation because they see some reason to do so. I'm going to give you an example here of a dumb cold call. Hi, Pat. I'm Dale Stevens with Atlantic Associates. We provide internal communications training, and I'd like to introduce our training programs to you and see if you'd like to attend a webinar to learn more about our courses and how they help companies. Now, if you look at that and you think that's not a bad opening, oh, we got some work to do. But if you looked at it and you picked out several mistakes, that's great. Here's one. It's all about them. We provide training, so what? I'd like to introduce our training programs to you. Big deal. Who cares? See if you'd like to attend a webinar. What do you mean attend a webinar? I don't even see a reason to stay on the phone with you. And to learn more about our courses and how they help companies. Okay, that's not even close to a benefit, but I think that's what the sales rep probably thinks is a benefit. Now, let me give you the same sales rep, or maybe a different sales rep, same company, same industry, but he's using a smart call approach. Hi, Pat. Dale Stevens here with Atlantic Associates. Understand that one of your initiatives for the year is strengthening the communication and collaboration between your account management and production departments so that you can increase your customer retention rate and order frequency. Well, with another components manufacturer, we were able to help them do exactly that and raise their retention by 55% in just 6 months and the reorder rate by 34%. And I'd just like to ask you a few questions, see if I could provide you with some information. Now, what happened there? Well, the sales rep obviously knew something about who he was calling, what was going on in their world, and then he plugged it into the smart call process and then mentioned some social proof, what he was able to do for somebody else similar, substantiated that with numbers, and at the end didn't ask for a decision. Really, all he wanted to do is to ask some questions. So really, all he's looking to do at the end there is just move it to the point where they could have a conversation. So how do we how do we do this? Well, I'm going to go through very quickly the smart call process here with you right at the beginning, from gathering the information to setting your objectives and then plugging it into the process so that you can create your own smart call.
And the way that we look at social selling here at LinkedIn is, it measures your performance against 4 essential elements. Creating your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. And the order of these is very specific. We didn't just jumble this together with a bunch of ideas. I truly believe, and based on the data that we have and the experience that I've had working with sales teams all over the world, it starts with your professional brand. If you as a sales professional do not have a polished reputation online, so meaning if somebody were to search for you, if somebody were to pull up your LinkedIn profile and you didn't look legitimate, if you didn't look like somebody that they could trust, none of this other work that you were going to do was going to matter. So finding the right people. Who are these decision makers? Who are the people in these companies that you want to do business with? And then engaging them with insights. So it's not just, hey, my name is John and I'm trying to sell you a product or service. It's, hey, my name is John. Here's something I know about your industry that may be impacting you. Here's something that I understand, about your specific business that you're running. It could be it's something, a little bit more lightweight as, hey, you and I went to the same school. But either way, you're leveraging insights to start building that relationship. And ultimately, that's what we want to do as sales professionals. Most B2B sales professionals are not transactional salespeople. They're looking to build ongoing relationships so that these people are customers and advocates in many ways for years to come. So as we did some research, I believe this was about last year, 2014, a couple years ago, that we did some research with the IDC because we wanted to understand how buyers were leveraging social media. We had a lot of ideas around this. We had a lot of hypotheses about how buyers were using social media, but we wanted to actually get the research. So we went off on this fact-finding mission, and this is a subset of what we had found. What we had found was that compared to other B2B buyers, the people who were not leveraging social media, the buyers who use social media for purchasing spent 84% more per purchase. And this one stat alone astounded me because most of the misconceptions were that people were using social media as buyers to always look for the discount. And I think that may be true in a B2C environment because you're looking for the coupons, you're looking for the discount codes, you're looking for the deal of the day. But in a B2B context, buyers aren't as interested in the deal of the day. They want to make sure that they are buying the right product or service to fill a gap within their business. And if they find, based on their own research, that product or service that's going to fill the gap and help their company, they're actually willing to spend more. And they do it without thinking twice because they feel confident that the decision they're making is helping their company, so if it costs a little bit of extra money, it's worth it. We also found that social buyers make 61% more purchases than average than the buyers who don't use social. So not only are these social buyers, the people who are using social media during buying decisions, spending more money, they're spending more money more often. So the idea that people are fighting over specific budgets seems to go away also. The individuals who are doing these, exhibiting these buying behaviors and are out looking for products or services to fill a gap, they're looking for the right product to fill the gap, and they're willing to buy more stuff because they realize that they're intelligent about what they're purchasing, so they're trying to fill as many gaps in their business as possible with products or services that they can research online. And Ken, you had brought this up, where sales and marketing start colliding, the idea of smarketing, where these sales professionals really can make the biggest impact and partner more effectively with these social buyers to find ways to actually break through the noise and build relationships with people who are leveraging social media as a buyer, falls within one of three buckets. First, it's social proximity. So how are you building your networks thoughtfully in a way to put yourself as close as possible to those decision makers? Going back to your example that you had earlier, Ken, this is fascinating. It started with phone calls, then you'd send a fax, and then you'd get another phone call. So you were leveraging different technologies, the phone and fax, to get as close as possible to that buyer. Now, with the onset of social media, with social networks like LinkedIn, your proximity, you have a global reach, and you're able to put yourself that much closer very quickly with these decision makers. Then it's the social presence. So going back to your professional identity, how are you presenting yourself online so that you are looked at as a subject matter expert in your area? Are you credible and authentic? Are you sharing information that is valuable to these buyers, that's helping them make better decisions? If you're doing all of that correctly, you start building social capital. And what social capital is finding ways to continue to build that relationship, because most buyers maybe not be ready to buy something right this minute. They're starting down this path of research to look for a product or a service to fill a business need. If you are close to them by proximity, you have a professional and authentic presence online, and you're sharing information and you're educating these buyers by providing that education, you're building social capital. So that when that buyer is ready to pull the trigger, is ready to say, you know what, it's time to spend the money and buy this product or service, you're going to be the first person they think of, because you've already built all the social capital and they already trust you.
Coca, could I jump in for just a second?
Absolutely.
I had a really cool research study I was made aware of just about a month ago from a friend of mine, Jonathan Johnson. He's the CEO of the More Good Foundation. And they were researching this social capital, this social credibility concept. And there was a research study where they asked buyers, and they said, okay, now this was B2C, some B2B, but mostly B2C. And they said, okay, what kind of content do you trust to make a purchase decision? And they found that only 14% actually trust highly produced content, meaning the stuff that obviously comes from a sales department or a marketing department. But here's this, 92% of the people trust content that comes to them through the social channel, through either content from social, from a blog that's been peer-reviewed, a review base on a book, for example. That's massive. 14% trust highly produced content. 92% trust social-based content. It blew me away.
Yeah, those are astounding numbers, and I'm not surprised by it. And I have my own hypothesis around this as well. Is that most sales professionals on this call, the 1,000+ people that are actually attending this right now, you already understand that people buy from people. This has been beat into us as sales professionals since probably the day we started our first job. People buy from people. And we continue to find that even though a brand has reach and a brand has some type of authentic value based on it that you trust or you don't trust because you don't know them, that as people buy from people, the individuals within that company are actually moving the needle, not so much the brand. And that as the brand shares things, that may be really good for awareness. You may generate some downstream metrics from that. But we find that as the sales professionals themselves become more advanced in sharing the information, that their networks, the people that are seeing that these other people are sharing the information, it starts adding value. And I think that, the study that you just mentioned, speaks directly to that. So, why is social selling important? Inherently, I'm very biased, and I believe that social selling is the end-all be-all. But then again, I'm biased. What we wanted to do is figure out, what actually matters and what can we measure. So I'll give a quick overview of what the social selling index is. And if you're looking at the slide, you see SSI leaders. So we call it the SSI. The social selling index is LinkedIn's methodology for measuring the impact or the benefit to a sales professional on how they're using the LinkedIn network. And it goes across a bunch of variables within the algorithm, but it mainly goes back to our definition of leveraging your professional brand to fill your pipeline with the right people, insights, and relationships. So is your profile complete? Is your profile inviting to customers? Are you sharing information that is actually being engaged? So all these activities, all these behaviors come into the social selling index, and there'll be more information about how you can get your social selling index number later on in this webinar. If you're interested in that, I suggest that every sales professional know what their SSI number is. But what we found as we started going off and doing our own research based on individuals who have high social selling index scores, and a high SSI in our definition is 70 and above. It's a scale from 0 to 100. So from 70 and above, was there actually a difference in how they were performing as sales professionals? And what we found was very surprising to us. Social selling leaders created 45% more opportunities than the ones that were below 70. That means that the behavior they were exhibiting on LinkedIn as a platform was actually helping them become better sales professionals and create more opportunities because they were able to build these relationships outside of phone and email. We also found that these social selling index leaders within companies were 51% more likely to hit their quota than the laggards. I mean, these are amazing numbers. And it surprises me when sales professionals are like, oh, I don't need to use LinkedIn. I'm doing just fine. No, you're really not. And the people on your teams that are learning to leverage social selling, the way that we describe it, are going to surpass you fairly soon. And we're starting to see more and more of this as this kind of takes off and becomes more global. And going back to how you're sharing information and are you actually engaging your network? If you thoughtfully built your network and you're making connections with these buyers, these social buyers, it will actually benefit you as a sales professional if you're posting status updates, which is something that sales professionals aren't very familiar with or not very comfortable doing. But I'm going to give you some data here that might actually push you over the edge to start sharing a little bit more often. Sales reps that exceed quota engage with prospects, they're these buyers, 39% more than laggards. And by engaging with, I mean sending emails, commenting, liking, sharing the updates. All of you log into LinkedIn and you see a stream of updates from your connections. How hard is it for you to leave a quick comment, give them a thumbs up, reshare some interesting stuff that you find from your connections? These engagements, this stuff builds social capital within your social buyers, and you shouldn't overlook it. It actually has an impact on how you're doing business. We also found that sales reps that exceed their quota, not just meet it, the ones that are exceeding their quota, have their updates engaged 98% more than laggards. And what does this mean? This means that sales professionals that are practicing social selling are sharing information that is actually being consumed by these buyers and engaged at a higher rate, because you become the single point of reference for your network. Your network starts looking to you and looking for the next status update from you to learn something new. So if you haven't been sharing on a regular basis on social networks like LinkedIn, you should be doing it because it will have an impact on how well you do as a sales professional on meeting your quota, filling your pipeline, and exceeding that quota. But that's not enough. You can share all day long. You can have the greatest profile that's polished. The one thing that keeps coming up time and time again, and in fact, this is where the crux of this conversation starts coming into with Ken and I, and this got brought up in the Sales Hacker event that we were attending, was how do you move from online to offline? Because you can build very strong relationships online. In fact, there's a lot of people out there that will be more than happy to tell you that there is a return on relationships. And I don't believe that. Because as sales professionals, there's no ROI on making friends. Yeah, you can make a lot of friends, but at the end of the day, you're trying to become a better salesperson. You're trying to actually fill your pipeline and close deals. And rarely does that happen in solely a virtual environment. You have to find ways, you have to have a methodology to go from online to offline. And by offline, I mean actually getting them on a phone so you can actually talk to them and hear their voice, or even better yet, schedule a meeting where you can actually see them face to face. And I think that's where Ken and I are going to start building the synergy based on what he had mentioned before about how he was leveraging phone and fax to do these things, and what I just talked about, why social selling is so important and is changing the game for how sales professionals are becoming successful, is moving from online to offline.